The word that is often translated as law, Torah, can mean more than what we think of as laws that are passed by a legislature that are, strictly enforced, etc. It has a broader meaning, direction, instruction, law, rule, and other words besides Torah are used as well: statute, commandment, judgments. All of these are centered in doing what is the will of God. What we call law in the Bible seems to be in basically two kinds. One is called Apodictic, or absolute law. This has more to do with a command. And what has been sometimes called casuistic or case law. Absolute law would be, for example, the commands that are addressed directly to the people in the Ten Commandments in the Decalogue. For example, the command, do not kill. Also, in regard to some of the penalties, there are statements about what to do with capital crimes. So, for example, in Exodus 21:12, anyone who hits and kills someone should be put to death. Case law is more remedial. A case is given and the remedy for it. So, for example, when two people are fighting and one hits the other with a stone or with his fist so that he is in bed for a while but doesn't die, if he recovers and is able to walk around outside with a cane, then the one who hit him shouldn't be punished except to pay for the loss of time from work and to pay for his full recovery. It is also what is called primary, where it sets out a relationship and the terms of that relationship. So, for example, if you lend money to my people who are poor among you, don't be a creditor and charge them interest. Okay, so these are if-then statements. It takes a particular situation and declares what should be the behavior, what should be the remedy, how it should be resolved. So the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments, appear in both Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy 5. We will be later looking at Deuteronomy 5 in much more detail. The Ten Commandments deal with different kinds of relationships. The relationship with God, the relationship with parents or superiors, and the relationship with equals. Those having to do with the relationship with God are no other gods, no idols, no wrongful use of God's name, and keeping the Sabbath. The one with dealing with parents is honor your parents. The relationship with equals is do not kill on your own authority, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not bear false witness, do not covet. The laws that follow begin with the law of the altar. That is, how do you build an altar? Out of what do you build it? How do you construct it? And then there are judgments, or what is called judicial law, having to do with slavery, capital crimes, injury to a person by a person, death of a person or animal by an animal, theft, damages, ownership disputes, seduction of a woman not betrothed, and then capital offenses against the religious and moral order. This is followed by moral commandments and duties. So, for example, the rights of the weak, religious duties, the court process and duties of assistance. And then finally, we have sabbatical times and the Levitical calendar, the feasts, the celebrations. So first the Sabbath, and then when certain festivals are to be carried out. So this basically encompasses pretty much all of life. There are parallels to biblical law and instruction in the ancient Near East. These are sometimes called codes, but they are better viewed as treatises since they're not really intended to be comprehensive or prescriptive. Rather, they teach principles through paradigms and examples. So we have, for example, the laws of Ornamu going back, 4,000 years at least, or even earlier, the laws of Lipit Ishtar, the laws of Eshnuna, the laws of Hammurabi, the Middle Assyrian laws, and the Hittite laws. And all of these, in some ways, are constructed in a similar way to what is in the biblical text. To give one example, we are going to look at the Stela of Hammurabi from about 1780 BCE. It was made in Babylon. And we see at the top of the stela that Hammurabi is said to receive the laws from the god Shamash, the god of justice. This is written in cuneiform. It's in a Semitic language. It's called Eastern Semitic, that is somewhat related to Hebrew. And it is probably the first language that got set down in a writing system. If we look at some of the features of the code or the treatise of Hammurabi, it can shed some light on our understanding of biblical law. So first of all, Hammurabi identifies himself. Then there is a mention of multiple gods. So he is worshiping the god Marduk, the gods Sin, Shamash, Anu, and Nana. So the giving of these statutes, of these laws, are all done on behalf of a whole pantheon of gods. He makes sure and provides for temples and for offerings. And all of this he mentions even before he gets to any of the laws. He wants to indicate that he is in right relationship to the gods. He is doing his due diligence and he is providing for their worship. And then he says, when Marduk sent me to rule over men, to give the protection of right to the land, I did right and righteousness, and brought about the well-being of the oppressed. This is, in general, an ancient Near Eastern goal, or at least it's supposed to be what rulers do, is to see to justice for the weak. The Book of the Covenant, which is basically Exodus 21 through 23, as well as Deuteronomic law, follows a similar structure to what we see in the treatise or code of Hammurabi. First of all, the identity of the lawgiver is given. But here it is the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. And in the Decalogue, Moses even is at the foot of the mountain, and he is not seen as the lawgiver. He is seen as the mediator, but it is not his own authority which brings about the law. Instead of mentioning all of the other gods that Hammurabi mentions, the command is given, you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a graven image. So a very different context. It is not polytheistic. And whereas Hammurabi mentions all of the altars and temples that he has been faithful in bringing about, there is the simple statement about an altar of earth you shall make for me and sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and your peace offerings. There is a similar transition to the giving of the actual laws. Now these are the ordinances which you shall set before them.